Hey, what's up, RPT 325? Michaela here with your week 11 instructional video. Primarily, I'm going to be going over LA9, so you're all set up for success. But before that, I'll just give you a quick overview of what's expected this week and then what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So to start off, this is our third week of Excel, asynchronous week. So we did not meet yesterday. Helpful videos. You really only need to watch the first two here. The interactive dashboards videos are super cool if you're interested, but not necessary to complete the assignments this week. Other than that, I'll just give you a heads up that the quiz should take you like 15 minutes or less this week. Back to mostly multiple choice, a couple of short answer, no outside resources needed. If you watch the videos and do LA9, you'll be more than prepared to be successful on this quiz. Other than that, let's make sure that we get our student surveys in. Remember, these are 5 points, and it's crucial information for me to make sure that I am setting you all up for success. And I do really appreciate those of you who do give some constructive feedback because it helps me make adjustments throughout the semester. Plus, it's 5 points for you, and it's pretty easy to get. With that being said, let's get into the learning assignment on pivot tables and pivot charts. So I'm going to pull up the directions here and I'm going to download the file. To download the file, you'll open up the starting file, push download, open that baby up, and it'll look something like this. Quick overview of what this data is. This is park program data from a year's worth of programs for a public park agency. This is adopted from actual data that I personally used in a previous job. So hopefully that helps you make some real world connections here. It's not made up stuff. Obviously things are changed for privacy. But this data is showing all of the programs that happened in 2023. So who led the program, what it was called, the type or category that it falls into, the date it occurred, how long it was, the number of people who showed up, the primary audience as identified by the program leader, and then what park it took place at. So we got a lot of good info here, and what our job is in this assignment is to pick out the stuff that matters and present it in a way that is easy to understand and is visually nice to look at. So let's look at our directions here for our guidelines. So the purpose here is to introduce you to pivot tables and charts in Excel. Pivot tables allow you to analyze and summarize large sets of data, and the charts help you communicate those results visually. We talked about the importance of good data visualization in the quiz from last week, so now it's your turn to practice. For this assignment, you are going to analyze the data, and you're going to do that by deciding what information is important to capture. It'll be up to you. I'll give you some examples, but ultimately it's your choice to decide what is important to capture and communicate here. But you might decide that it's important to capture how many programs per leader happened in this year, how many programs happened at each park, or the total number of program hours. Use the helpful videos to make the analysis less tedious. We're going to create at least 8 pivot tables and pivot charts, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. It is far less daunting than you may think. You're also going to edit your chart design to fit your preferences. The only requirement here is that it should be different than the default that Excel gives you. I'd like you to also use at least 2 formulas in your analysis, so something like the sum formula or the average formula, count if formula if you find it necessary. And the last thing here is to write a short paragraph, and you just include this in your workbook on a new sheet, but include a short paragraph about the key takeaways from your analysis. So think about what's the purpose of your analysis, who might care about the results of your analysis, like what are you trying to communicate here. To submit it, just save the file as your last name underscore LA9 and then submit it on Canvas just like we've been doing all semester. All right, let's get into the example. So getting back to our data over here, the first thing you're going to do is select the A1 cell and then do Command or Control A to select all of your data. Come over to Insert, select Pivot Table. We've already selected the range, and then we do want this pivot table to go into a new worksheet, so all you have to do is push OK. And then from here, you're going to select your different data fields, and it's going to create a pivot table for you. So what this is doing is basically all of that work that we did last week, typing in equals, count, if, blah, 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 blah. This is doing it for us. So it's important that you understand how these are created, and now you get to know the shortcut. So for our first pivot table, we're just going to see how many programs each leader led in 2023. So we're going to select your name because that's the column over here that has the event or the program leaders' names, and then you're going to drag that down to values. So it'll be in the rows as well as the values, and now I've got this beautiful table. The first thing that you need to do here is double check that your data is quote unquote clean, meaning that there's no typos. And right off the bat, I'm seeing a typo for our program leader named Alex. It's probably unlikely that we have somebody named Alex who spells it like this, and most likely that's a typo. That's super common to have in data. It's actually very unrealistic that there is only one typo in our data, but for the purposes of this assignment, we don't need to spend hours and hours and hours practicing cleaning data. So you just need to do just this one correction. So you'll come over to your original data, you'll select the name column, come over to data, and sort it alphabetically. That way it's easy for us to find the typo. You will correct the spelling there, come back to our pivot table, push refresh, and now we are looking good. From here, we're going to insert our pivot chart. So come over to insert, select pivot chart. This is different than what we've done before. Before we've just selected a chart. It's important that you select pivot chart so our table and our chart are tied together. You can adjust it so it's easier to work with. And then there's just a couple things here that we can do to make this chart easy for the reader to understand. So you'll click anywhere in your table, come over to data, sort it Z to A, so the largest is at the beginning and the smallest is at the end. You can add a chart title, so this chart is showing the number of programs per leader. And then we'll also label our sheet as well, programs.leader. From there, our job gets even easier. So you're going to come down to your sheet label, right click, select move or copy, select move to end, select create a copy, and push OK. So now we have an exact duplicate of our original sheet, and now we're going to make some changes. So this time, instead of seeing how many programs per leader, let's try and see if we can see how many programs are happening in each park. So I'm going to deselect your name and select park, drag that down to values, and now I can see how many programs in 2023 happened at each park. I'm going to do those same quick little organization tricks and update my chart title. So it's programs per park, and I'm going to update our label here as well. Programs.park. And you'll continue doing this until you've gone through most of this data, so you can see how many programs per program type, how many programs are in each primary audience category. Something else that you can do is you can show two different fields in the same chart, so I'll show you what that looks like. Come over to move or copy again, move to end, create a copy, push OK. And this time we're going to see how many participants were in each program. So I'll deselect park, I will select number of participants and program type, and now our chart is showing the number of participants in each of these categories. Same kind of thing, I'll organize the data so it's easy to read. Update the chart title, so this is participants per type, and I'll update this one as well. You can do the same thing for the number of programs or number of participants per program. That chart will look a little bit more chaotic, but I'll show you anyway. So because we have so many different program titles, there's just a lot in this chart, but it could be useful data. So this time we'll update it to say programs. And same thing here. From there, you'll keep making copies of your same pivot chart and pivot table sheets until you have at least 8. But the process is going to look the same over and over again, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time here showing you. I'll show you a finished product at the end. A couple more things. These 2 columns are going to be your best options for using some formulas to analyze the data. So you can do 2 sum formulas here, and then you can make another like timeline like we did in LA8. It's up to you, but what that might look like is doing equals sum, and then selecting this column, closing the parentheses. That is our total number of program hours. Make it bold just because. And then you can do the same thing with the number of participants. So equals sum, select here, shift command down, close your parenthesis, and then there you go. The last thing that you need to do is write a short paragraph for your analysis. So just create a new sheet, put it at the end. You can title it analysis or discussion or something like that. And then you can pick out what information is the most important from your analysis and who might care about that information. One example might be for something like your programs per leader. Imagine that you are a supervisor for the program delivery team for this park agency, and it's time to do annual employee evaluations. It might be helpful to look at a chart that looks like this, where it shows a comparison of all your employees and how many programs they've led in a year. You'll know what the expectation is and who is above it and who is below it. But something like this could be very helpful for communicating to somebody that they are doing an excellent job at delivering programs, or it could be evidence to show like, hey, maybe we have something that we can work on here. There's an area of growth for some of the people who are only delivering a few programs per year. You'll do that for whatever analysis you come up with, and you'll just type it out in a cell here. You can adjust the sizes of the cells or present it in whatever way. I'll be able to see your information regardless, but you can make the cells big or just type it in there, but I will be able to see. The very last part, I know I said that last part was the last part, but the for real last part is editing the design of your charts. So all of these that I just showed you are in the default of what Excel gives you. I want you to practice making some visual edits. So where we do that is first we click on the chart, then these different ribbons will show up. You want to select the design ribbon. You've got a bunch of options here. You can change the chart type. You can use one of these pre-created chart designs. You can change the colors. You can choose a specific pre-designed layout. What's going to be the most helpful, I think, are changing the chart elements. So for example, this chart automatically has a legend over here that really doesn't give us much information or help us understand this data better. So you can come over here, go to legend, and remove that. And then something that I really like to do is put data labels on my charts because it just makes it easier to understand what we're seeing here. So there's data labels on top of all of our bars now. It can be as simple as that, or if you want to like really get into the visual design aspects, by all means do whatever your heart desires, but make sure it's different than the default. Other than that, we're just going to save it as last name LA9, save it to your OneDrive, and call it a day. So what yours should look like when you're done is you should have all of your original data. You should have a new sheet for each one of your pivot tables and pivot charts. You'll have at least 8 of these, and then you will have an additional one where it has your typed out analysis of all your really, really awesome ideas about the key points or key takeaways from your analysis and who might care about them in the RPT field. But yeah, other than that, that's all you need to do this week. Like I said, we've got a makeup week next week, so don't stress too hard. Reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you all on the 13th. Have a great weekend.